thank you. Such a delight to be here. And actually, I've come to your country, this remarkable country that I don't plan to leave. So if there's someone in the audience that could hook me up with some sort of, I don't know, permits, citizenship, anything, I'm in. Because I've been here for about a week now. I started in the South Island, which was remarkable. I know you're not here to hear about my itinerary, but as a bit of a cultural anthropologist, I've wanted to really come early and really get to know the people, because this talk is not for me, this is for you. And I really wanted you to understand that harnessing the power of relationships and people, as Jeremy said, is really what it's all about. And so what I hope to offer today is a framework for how to think about how to do that, because community is really serious business. One of my friends in the US, Oliver Chen, who's like a lead analyst for all the retail and luxury brands, he talks about how it's like an omni-channel, right? And that we think about our retail channels, we think about our internet channels, we think about our trade channels, but community across everything is like an omni-channel, because people are at the underlying ethos of everything that you do. So when you think about it, a highly engaged community, whether it's the icebreaker community or the communities that I'm going to share here, is really critical to predicting your future success. And so thinking about the online shoppers, like who would buy something today without reading a review? You just wouldn't do it. And so now we have to figure out, I mean, it's gotten so bad. So it's such table stakes that the hackers are figuring out how to have fake reviews because they're that important. So you have to look, well, if there's people trying to hack it, it actually must mean something. So how do we do it in a way that makes it authentic? And how do we get real people telling real stories? Because those stories are so much more important, and word of mouth really does matter. And so I don't know the stats here in New Zealand, but I can tell you that 75% of Americans are much more likely to buy from brands that contribute positively to society. I think in New Zealand, all the brands seem to do that, which goes back to my request for citizenship. So if there's anyone in the audience, please see me afterwards on the app. So community, like I said, it is the omni-channel. This is not just a framework. It's about connecting, because if you connect, then you're going to increase the frequency of engagement. If you have context always frames the right conversation, right? If you're not thinking about going outside, if you're not cold, you don't need a wool undergarment. But context, when you're out there, you're like, oh, wait, I need this. So they're the community and the people that you're standing in the line with, those people are going to be the referrals for you. So making sure that you're there at all the places where context happens, because that's going to increase loyalty and it's going to lower churn. And then finally, you know, community is about crowdsourced demand. So crowdsourced demand means you're not going to have to pay for acquisition costs, and that's going to lower what we call CAC, which is the cost of acquiring a customer, and it's going to increase what we call LTV, which is the lifetime value of that customer. So these are real builders, drivers to think about that, because today, quite frankly, it's not at all about what you say about yourself. A brand is really what a friend tells a friend. And so if you want to architect those conversations, how are you going to do that? You want to have real people telling real stories. But those real stories emanate often from the stories that you put out there in the world, and then those telegraph, and they get shared, and they get shared, and they get shared. Which then leads me to what I'm calling the loyalty love loop. Because you know how we've all talked about the purchase funnel? The funnel is gone because when you bring people into the conversation, it's a loop that drives people all around, and they engage, they talk to each other, they re-engage. And now what we're going to see is a framework for how that all happens. So just keep this in mind, the infinity love loop, and then we're going to see how it all comes together. So I have today this concept, you know, direct to consumer. I don't know what you call it here, D2C, we call it in the US, but it's not a channel. It's a relationship. And so if you reframe everything in the context of it being a relationship, you're going to think a lot differently about how those relationships are built. And so what I really want to help you with is thinking about how those factors actually help you build authentic community. So we're going to go through all of these factors, and I'm going to give you examples, and you can take notes if you want, but we're going to wrap it all up with slides that sum it all up. So don't worry about capturing any individual slide, because it's all here. The first and most important thing, and this country does it better than any country I've ever visited, is sharing your values and your intentions. And leaders really need to think about that. So I would ask you, what do you believe in? What matters to you as a leader, and what matters to you for a company? And then how do you take that framework? Let's take Brian Chesky as an example at Airbnb. So when we had and continue to have the immigration challenges that we're having in the US with our leadership, they took out billboards everywhere saying, "We accept." So they went right up against the government to say, this is our belief system. They're not marketing rooms here. They're marketing a belief system that comes right from the top, and it's the culture that they stand for. And so Patagonia, a very famous brand, I don't know how much of it is here, but I think a bit of it. Again, this is not at all about the clothes that they're selling. This is about a belief system, and then engaging you to actually talk to Congress and talk to government, which, as I've been here, I was actually up in Wellington a couple of days ago at the Tapapa, and as I was walking out of the extraordinary bird exhibit, there was a survey that you could take, because we're trying to save the birds and bring the birds back to this country, not telling you anything you don't know. And they were taking a survey saying, would you be willing, if you're a cat owner, to keep your cat indoors? And they surveyed every single person as they walked out the door with a beautiful interactive exhibit, and then giving you the survey results right there. So I thought to myself, well, that's brilliant, because now I've had this beautiful historical experience of understanding the birds of this country. And now, if I lived here, now what can I do to bring them back? And so I loved that way of creating a conversation just through a survey and through engagement. And so that's a belief system. Nike does this very, very well, both in the US, and you may have heard of a guy named Colin Kaepernick, and we'll talk about him in a second. But when he decided that he didn't stand for what our government was standing for, he stood alone, and Nike got behind him and said, "We stand with you." And that is serious business, because at first there was people were burning shoes on social media, and everyone was saying, oh my gosh, Nike made such the gaffe here. But that was one camera on a few people. When you looked at the long-term value, hundreds of millions of dollars of value in growth at Nike after that campaign, when you looked at the stock price before the campaign and the stock price 6 months afterwards. So standing for a belief system is really important, and your community will support you in that. But you have to be willing to sort of weather those storms, because if it's truly your belief system, then it's really what your brand is about. So shared values and intentions can actually strengthen brand loyalty, even though sometimes it's scary because it feels like not everybody agrees with your intentions, but that's okay, because your tribe will follow you, and your tribe does believe in you, and they will bring all of their friends along with you. So speaking of tribes, nurturing that tribe, thinking of them as the ambassadors of your brand, is one of the most important things that you can do, because that tribe will take you anywhere you need to go. So I started a company called Brandless, and when we launched Brandless, we went out and we found who are the people that we resonate with. And the first people that showed up were the vegans of LA. I didn't know I figured there were vegans in LA, but I didn't know about this particular community called #vegans of LA. And Gwenna messaged us. And she said, oh my gosh, we've been waiting for a brand like this. And we said, fantastic, we're so excited to meet you. And we got to LA and we met with Gwenna. And she introduced us to her whole community of vegans in LA. And then when we decided where were we going to do our first pop-up, we said, well, we'll do it in LA with Gwenna, because she'll bring her tribe. And then her tribe brought together all of these people. These are not macro influencers with millions and millions of followers. These are what we call in the US micro influencers, people who have very specific things, that they are a yoga teacher, they're a wellness instructor, they're a mindfulness trainer, they're a vegan of LA leader, and everything in between. and we said, come join our community and bring your friends. And so they then brought their friends, which then led to the unlocking of the brandless community, where all of a sudden, not a single photo that's here did we take. All of these photos, and there were millions of them, were popping up every day. And this actually reflects the request for please, please, please do pet experiences. And we did it because we were listening to what our community wanted, and we knew that the tribe was going to accept it and then celebrate it, and this was going on 24/7, 365. So I would ask you, have you found your ambassadors, and then how are you nurturing them? And have you put headcount or resources that are dedicated to making sure that you're nurturing them, that you're talking to them, and that they're an integral part of how you think about your brand? Because remember what I said earlier, it's not what you say, it's what a friend tells a friend. These are your friends. So I met an entrepreneur, and you should follow this account on Instagram. It's called Thing Testing. And so I met this woman, Jenny, and Jenny was a VC in Europe who had a passion for direct-to-consumer brands. And she started following these brands, but then she started photographing them and then writing a review from a venture capital perspective and then writing a review from a consumer perspective out of Europe. But she was doing it mostly with US brands. And Jenny sent me an email and said, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about what you're doing at Brandless. Can you send me a box next time I come to the US? I said, absolutely. And then I got to know her, and I actually invested in the company, full disclosure, because what I learned was that Jenny was actually building what we call in the US, do you have the consumer reports here? Yes, so I said, this woman is building the consumer reports for the millennial generation. And she took Instagram, which is a pretty non-flexible platform, and there's a part of Instagram called, close friends. And she sort of used that as a hack to say, what if I got the close friends to actually be subscribers? And so she said, I'm going to charge $100 a year, US. So what's that, about 140, 160 here, something like that. And you can be my close friend. But I'm not going to take any affiliate dollars from any of these brands because I want to remain independent. But what I will do is if these brands want to give out codes and other things, if you're a close friend, you can get those things. And you could be the first to get reviews. And so she started reviewing all these direct-to-consumer brands because the only way to get a direct-to-consumer brand, usually in the early stages of one, is to order it online. And so this is like de-risking that because you can follow it, you can learn about it, and then if you want to order it, you can order it, but you can't really find these at retail. And then she created a community, and then she's doing pop-ups where people can do the reviews alongside her. And so she hails from Helsinki, where I met her. She just relocated to the US, and actually Harvard is now writing a case at their business school on how she is sort of disrupting this next platform of consumer reviews. And so another brand, again, a US brand, I don't know if you've heard of the Skim, but actually I'm an advisor to this company. And Danielle and Carly, when they started the company, they were two low-level news, I wouldn't even call them news producers. They were probably coffee makers at NBC, but they were news junkies. And so their friends would say to them, can you just tell us what's happening? Because unfortunately, people aren't reading the paper anymore. And so the night before the State of the Union, they would write up a quick thing. Okay, here's what's happening. Or it's any big news event, they'd write up, here's what's happening. And then their friends would send it around. And they said, wait a second, this thing is getting passed around and passed around and passed around. Perhaps we should start a newsletter properly. So they left their news organization and they started this company called The Skim, which is basically you skim the news and they recap the news. So they're not creating any original content, but it's just a newsletter. Well, this newsletter now probably has, 6 million subscribers, maybe more, including Michelle Obama and Oprah and everyone else. And then they started something called Skimbassadors. What's a Skimbassador? A Skimbassador is somebody who passes the newsletter along to 6 other people. And Oprah Winfrey's a Skimbassador, but so am I, and so are hundreds of thousands of people, and we've all passed it along to 6+ people. And what do you get for being a Skimbassador? Maybe if you're lucky, they'll put your birthday in the newsletter. It's just, there is no payment. It's just being part of a community. It's just saying, I'm in the know, and I want to pass that along to others who are in the know. So understanding that passion and authentic engagement leads to deep connection and long-lasting relationships. So now we're going to think about, how do you enable what I call network effects? You actually can architect for that. So you say, well, wait a second, our stuff is on YouTube, it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn. I mean, all depending upon what kind of brand you're building. It's on our website, it's in all these other places. How do we organize all of that? And there are ways to do that, and I'll show you some of them. But you also have to understand that as beautiful as your photography might be, and as much as your campaigns are organized by your agencies, sometimes the most brilliant things happen in the most ugly places. So here's an example. That's not ugly at all, but you probably have no idea what that is. Actually, does anybody know what that is? By a show of hands? You do. Yay. Well, don't give it away. So we saw this on the Brandless feed because somebody tagged us, and they said they were going camping. And they were scooping out the inside of an orange, and we had a gluten-free brownie mix, and it only required water. Non-GMO, organic, gluten-free brownie mix, and all you needed was water. So they said the perfect thing to take with you on a camping trip is Brandless's gluten-free, non-GMO, organic brownie mix. And you put it into an orange over a campfire, and it makes an orange-infused brownie. And so we said, wow, that's like a great idea. Never heard about that. So we pulled that into our feed, and then we posted it, and we told the story, and then we posted the recipe. Within an hour, this is what happened. All of a sudden, people started to tag their friends saying, let's do it this weekend. You're going to love this. Come on, we have to do this. This sounds amazing, amazing, amazing. And this is what a network effect looks like. It's not very sexy. It's not something that your agency would ever tell you is a good idea. And it's not something you can really architect. You really just have to think about all of the stuff was happening in the feed by friends telling friends about what was happening, and that was really exciting. So I would ask you, when you think about your brands, like, what's your network effect, and how are you building a movement? Because movements, I can tell you, they're never built alone. And you want to build that. So I talked earlier about, this disaggregation. So a friend of mine, Gina Bianchini, a great entrepreneur in the US, she started this company called Mighty Networks. She originally founded a community platform called Ning. And actually, Jeremy, we'll talk, maybe Gina can come next year, only if I can come back with her. But by that time, I'll be a citizen, so I'll already be here, so it won't be an issue. Because somebody here is figuring that out while I'm talking, I hope, because I'll give you the slides, I'll trade. So anyways, Gina built Mighty Networks, and Mighty Networks is a platform that actually helps you organize all of these things, because community and influencers and organizers, they're all over the place, and it's hard to manage. And so their software programs, as Jeremy was alluding to, you'd need a truckload in the early days, but now these things can just be a SaaS platform that you can use to help organize that. So you might know this lady. She's quite popular in the US, and her name is Beyonce. And she started a collaboration with Adidas called Ivy Park. So that's all good. That's Beyonce, that's Adidas. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? So if you were following this, and you were an Adidas subscriber, you were shown every time you went to buy a new pair of running shoes on the Adidas site for maybe 3 or 4 months before. If you're an ambassador to Adidas, which just means that you give them their email address, we'll give you an early peek at Ivy Park. So just to even get an early peek at Ivy Park, you had to sign up. So they got the email addresses, right? So that was like a campaign to actually acquire email addresses. Then when she launched Ivy Park, everyone was like, oh, this is all about Beyonce. But no, it wasn't just about Beyonce. All of a sudden shows up in Reese Witherspoon's driveway, a giant orange box. And if you haven't seen this campaign, I could spend literally an hour showing you the genius of how they orchestrated this, where a giant orange box, almost half the size of this yellow half circle, came, and inside it was like a closet box, and the whole Ivy Park collection shows up. And so it's staged as if Reese got this Ivy thing. She goes to her driveway, she's with her mother, she's like, what is this thing? And next thing you know, she's coming in and out of the box, and she's in all the different outfits. And Mindy Kaling, she loves to do Instagram live feeds from her closet. if you had Mindy's closet, you would live there too. And so all of a sudden, because she's like a Beyonce wannabe, she's doing her Beyonce dances in her closet. And they went around the world and they got all of their friends to actually go live with this as it went. So around the world, everybody is mirroring the Beyonce moment. Again, they haven't taken out a lick of advertising. And now all of these big influencers are part of it. All of a sudden, a brand in the US that's a chicken brand called Popeyes. I don't know if you have that here. I hope not. No offense to Popeyes. But given the extraordinary food that I've had here, I don't think Popeyes would really fit in the stack. But Popeyes noticed that the Ivy Park collection looked a lot like their colors. And so some clever person in their department, literally within hours of this whole thing launching, said, wait a second, because this is the Popeyes uniforms. So now Popeyes started posing in the Ivy Park collection, and all of a sudden Popeyes now was part of the Ivy Park moment. They had no idea, but because they were paying attention and they saw the movement, it went from Beyonce to Reese and Mindy and all the rest around the world, and they engaged like giant influencers all around. They did it in India. I'm sure they did it here. They did it all over. And then Popeyes jumped onto the bandwagon and they started posing. And then their employees, which bought their uniforms in their like employee website, they sold out. And then Popeyes started selling out of their chicken because everybody was going to Popeyes trying to see if they could buy the Popeyes uniform so they can be in the Ivy Park collection. So it's like, I mean, it is the Beyonce effect, but it just shows you they still hadn't taken out any advertising. And so it's enabling your teams to be a part of that and understanding that you have to jump on these things. So this is a brand called Bumble. Bumble it started out as a dating brand built by women for women, and they have 24 million subs, all created and activated by the queen bees. The queen bees on Bumble are just women who were in the network and said they wanted to host Bumble parties. And all of a sudden, these ambassadors helped scale this grassroots effort to 26 million subscribers. LinkedIn, a brand I'm sure you've heard about, is another network effect. You know, Jeremy and I could leave this conference and have a great idea that we're going to start a LinkedIn for millennials, but the challenge with that one is that everyone else is on LinkedIn. So even if we do a better job with the profiles, we do a better job with the publishing, we do a better job with all the things that we think LinkedIn can do better, people aren't leaving LinkedIn because of the network effect. If that's where all the activity is, we could build the very best LinkedIn 2.0 over here, but no one's going to go because scaled and engaged communities not only have lower acquisition costs because you're going where your friends are, but the moats that are defensible, meaning that you can't have people leave, actually protects the businesses. Now let's talk about co-creation and collaborations. So co-creation and collaboration, the story I told you about the cats and the birds, that was really your government co-creating a conversation with the people here and the citizens who are in that experience who are then telling their friends, and that's creating new content. And then that data becomes content. Airbnb, it's not just about the houses and the rooms, but the hosts, which are the epicenter of the Airbnb experience, they have so much to offer. And so they realized they had this asset on their network that they hadn't even tapped. They tapped them for their rooms, they tapped them for their listings, they were hounding them to keep their calendars up to date, but they hadn't realized that they might be the best people to take you, on a walk up Roy's Glacier, or they may be the best people to tell you that secret haunt in Queenstown, or hear, what's the best way to see a certain island. And so all of a sudden, that's content, and they unlock that collaboration with the people that were already there. Similarly, Spotify, they noticed on their network, and I think Brian, who's going to give us a chat, I don't know, today or tomorrow, may have created this campaign, but it's brilliant because they actually looked at the data and they said, for example, on Valentine's Day, dear person who played sorry 42 times on Valentine's Day, hang in there. We're with you. We got you. And so it's very clever. They talked to the people who were with Brexit, and they said to the 3,749 people who streamed, it's the end of the world as we know it. The day of the Brexit vote, we got you. We see you. We hear you. So data can be sexy, and data can be a way to co-collaborate without ever asking any questions, just by looking at what's happening. So think about, what can your community collaborate and co-create alongside you? I love this one. It's one of my favorites. So this guy, I don't know if you know anyone like him, but he travels a lot. And one of his things that he does when he travels is he photographs the carpets in the hotels. You know, everyone's got their thing. No judgment. And so his daughter was so excited that he was like building this Instagram following of all the carpets he was photographing, that she reached out to Instagram community and she said, "You gotta boost my dad's site. He's like, I know it's a bit weird, he photographs carpets, but we wanna make him a rock star because he's on the road all the time." And this was a way that the daughter was creating with the dad. Well, Marriott got a hold of him once this account started to grow and said, "Oh my gosh, this guy's like a carpet influencer." I mean, you know, it takes all kinds, but guess what? They were smart enough, just like Popeyes. They invited him to Marriott headquarters. They showed him the new hotel plans, and you know that they got 3.6 million votes that he orchestrated on the new carpet plans, and the engagement from Marriott was off the charts. So it's not just something that's happening inside of your company, it's also things that are happening out there in the world, and then figuring out how do you boost them, how do you bring them into the conversation. This is a brand called Rent the Runway. Rent the Runway, which I don't think it's here now, but we'd have to talk to Icebreaker if you want to rent. I don't think you'd really want to rent that stuff once you wear it. I mean, although the wool does wash well if you hang it out, I've noticed, but that's another story. So Rent the Runway is places where you can rent your clothes. And what's so awesome about this, they started with renting like ball gowns and things for weddings and proms and other things. But then they went to a subscription model where at any given time, you can have 3 outfits in your closet and you pay like a monthly fee and you keep turning it over, which is wonderful. I think they're the largest dry cleaner in the country. But what's so interesting about this brand and how they're co-creating, so for me, if I'm gonna rent a gown, and this is like an important event, how am I going to know if it's going to fit? And so the original way that Jen Hyman launched this site is she had beautiful models in these beautiful gowns, and all was well. But guess what? I don't look like those people, especially this morning. They had us up at like, I don't know, 6:30. So sorry about that. And so people would say, you know what? I'm actually long-waisted with a big butt. And so this gown I sized up. And somebody else said, you know, I'm heavy on the top or I'm pear-shaped on the bottom, so I would size down. And all of a sudden the reviews started to come in and they said, you know what, we're gonna drop these photos of these models and we're just gonna put these terrible selfies of people literally in bathrooms, at their date, in their photos, and show real people in real gowns. Well, guess what? Take rate went up 30% the next day. And so then they had to go to their engineering department. And this is a really important thing I want you to hear because I want to talk to you later. You'll hear it in the Peloton example. They had to make those reviews. Once they realized that those reviews were really a critical part of the content on Rent the Runway, they had to architect those reviews so that the database had all of the same information so that they were searchable, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't just say, oh, reviews are great. You actually have to prioritize those reviews so that you can integrate them. So you have to enable your community to contribute in obvious and non-obvious ways. Spotlighting your people. So that's your team, that's your community, those are the people who are part of it. So I'm on the board of this company called Ipsy, and so Ipsy is the largest makeup community in the world. And what we sell, our product, is what we call a glam bag. And that glam bag, for about $12 or $14 US a month, you get like a monthly bag of makeup that goes to your personalized profile. And so we send out 200 different glam bags. We actually send millions, but 200 different varieties based on the things that you like. I like cream, I like mascara, I'm into nail polish, I'm into color, et cetera, et cetera. But the Ipsy community is really about self-discovery. And I always say that we're not in the makeup business, we're in the confidence business. because we want people to understand that all of these women actually have stories. These are micro influencers that all are part of our community, and they become leaders in the community, and they tell their stories, and we've now pulled them all into our advertising. Peloton, which I talked to you about earlier, is a spin bike that comes with a screen, and you can go live or go watch classes on that screen. So it looks like this. See the teachers in the studio, and you see this guy, and he's looking at the screen, and the music is playing, and you're on your bike. So why am I showing you this screen? I'm showing you this screen because if you take a live class on Peloton, and it's your 50th class, your 100th class, your 300th class, the teacher during that hour or half an hour, however long the class is, she's going to shout out to you in Kansas, in Kentucky, in Tennessee, congratulating you. But how is she doing that while she's also on the bike and her heart rate is going? She's doing it because the engineers at Peloton built a different app for the teachers than the app that you're seeing. So she not only is seeing her playlist, but she's also seeing who's in that community that's live right at that moment, and then they're blowing up the type so she can actually do that shout out. So there you are in your living room somewhere in, the middle of the country or your basement, and you're on this bike, and all of a sudden this teacher in a New York studio shouts you out and tells you you're great or congratulates you for the effort that you just made. So it's kind of remarkable the way you have to engineer that spotlighting. Apple's been running their shot on an iPhone campaign for years now. And with the new camera, if you haven't gotten it, it's quite great. I have it. I would check it out. My shots of Doubtful Sound are amazing. So when I'm citizen here, I can happily dedicate those shots. But everyone matters. Everyone wants to feel seen. And you have to figure out a way to enable that. And then finally, you have to create experiences, what we call IRL, which is in real life. And so those experiences, like this is down in the meatpacking district in New York, and this was a brandless store that was there for, I think we were there for about 2 weeks' time. But it was a way to meet the community. It was a way for me to sit down with influencers and talk to them about what we were doing, why we were doing clean beauty, the way in which we were doing it. It also was a way for influencers who go around and literally make their life on shooting. So that architecture of that shop was all architected for Instagram, for selfies. So we didn't shoot any of these. We found these in social media from people who shot them. So ask yourself, how are you bringing that experience to life? And are you engaging the 5 senses? Sweet Greens, which is a salad bar brand in the US that's on fire, they started with festivals. It has nothing to do with salad. But it was really about convening people. Gentle Monster, an eyeglass brand, created art galleries to have people come in. Casper, a sleep brand, had sleep pods in their pop-ups initially. Vans created festivals, and they're a sneaker brand. And the Assembly, which is like a co-working space for women in San Francisco. Upstairs, you can see the co-working space. But at night, when they close the co-working space, they have talks, and then there's all exercise studios for women underneath. And so it's like, how are you doing this? I think tomorrow, my great friend Rachel is closing the conference, and she created an extraordinary brand that she's going to tell you about called Story. But really, it's about creating that experience, and this is a shot from one of her stories. But make sure to show up and meet your community. Experiment with multisensory experiences, because that's going to unlock memory. We won't get into neuroscience right now. That's another talk. But it's important to understand that sensory engagement unlocks all kinds of other conversations. So what did we learn? We learned that D2C is a channel. It's a relationship, not a channel. We learned that shared values and intentions are going to strengthen the brand, that truth, trust, and transparency is what really leads to authentic relationships, that scaled and engaged communities lower your acquisition costs, so it's real business, right? That you've got to make your community creative stakeholders and enable them to contribute in obvious and non-obvious ways, and that everybody matters. Everyone wants to be seen and to be heard. And you have to show up and meet them, experiment with multisensory experiences. So this is kind of a recap of everything. I won't reread it, but it's for you if you want to learn and see the recap. But remember I told you about this loyalty love loop and about driving to purchase? Well, purchase is at the center of that loop, but nurturing your tribe, enabling network effects, understanding that collabs and co-creation are what engage that tribe in that loyalty, spotlighting your people is critically important, and finally, show up in real life, because that is the best way to learn things that you'll never learn on paper or in a report that a team member might send you, but actually get out there and talk to people. So thank you. That was fun.
Thank you so much. So what we do at the summit is we just do a bit of a Q&A just to draw out a little bit more of the content based on kind of what's going on with our audience. So this is an extraordinary playbook, right? And a lot of us in this room are still thinking, oh, what's our digital strategy? Should we do Facebook ads? And you're saying that's kind of 101, right? You've got to lift way, way beyond. So I just want to dig into a couple of those points and get to some of the how-tos so we can kind of learn how to apply that stuff. So let's start. Shared values and intentions. So how do you work out what sticks? It's no luck that Nike and Patagonia were kind of, striking to the heart of their consumers. Do you go to an agency? Do you need a strong sense of purpose? How does a brand work out what sticks?
Yeah, so I would say that share? On that, if you're asking an agency to help you with that, you've lost. That's not for your agency. That's for you. You might ask an agency after you've developed your values, shared your values with your company, because it has to start there with your team. And I know we're going to hear more about team building and community and culture building inside. But I would say that first and foremost, you have to codify that as a leadership team, as a founder. You know this. What is the values? What do you believe in? And then both opportunistically in the sense of a government thing or a societal thing that's happening that you didn't expect, or as part of, so the Colin Kaepernick thing, that happened, who knew that was going to happen? And all of a sudden Nike jumped on it because it was their values and their intentions. The Airbnb thing, again, who knew that we were going to have this administration, and they jumped on it, but their values and intentions were already set. So I would say that first and foremost, as leaders, as builders, as founders, as entrepreneurs, you need to know your values, and you need to own those values, and your team needs to own those values, and you need to be passionate. We heard last night from the founder of this extraordinary space
George Fistich.
So that passion is his filter for anybody he's going to hire. Yeah. They have to be deeply passionate about the things that they're doing here, which is extraordinary wine. And so that's a filter, and that goes to those values.
So it's a very important point, right? Because it'd be easy to watch that and go, this is a clever marketing talk. This isn't. This is how a company expresses its point of view. It's actually what's under the hood that matters.
100%. And that CEOs, for those of you who are shy in the audience, get over it. Because now you're part of the brand. Your voice is part of the brand. Don't relegate that to someone in the marketing department. It's you. And own it, and get comfortable with that. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you're part of that and your voice matters.
So the vegans of LA example, how did you find, you said, we found these people, How do you find these people?
So I actually didn't say that the right way. They found us. And so we were obviously nurturing our communities on Facebook and Instagram very, very early. In fact, months before we actually launched the brand. And then they had seen it or heard about it. And one of our values was that we had this vegan and gluten-free and organics, and that we were all these things that we were putting out there before we ever told anyone what we were actually launching. It was just a belief system. And they had heard about us. And she showed up and was so excited. And one of the things that I always said to my community team is that anybody who shows up, they have a good comment, a bad comment, or content they want to add, we engage with them. We're always on 24/7. And so you have to architect your team for that. The same way you have to have engineers build you a different screen for your spin teachers, you also have to make sure that your community team is engaging and responding to everyone. So she showed up. We had no idea.
And one of your themes is kind of online, offline integration.
Yes.
The value of the real world, the value of human interactions, because you got her in, and through that, some stuff happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important, right? Because often people are so obsessed with the power of social media or all the digital stuff, but you're taking it back to human interaction. So can you tell us how that piece of the puzzle works?
No, it's a great question. So your physical spaces are just physical manifestations of your digital spaces, and your digital spaces are kind of the showrooms for what's in your physical spaces. So if it's a permanent physical space, as you have in the icebreaker shops, then how are you connecting that, like the Tapapa example of when I was walking out the door, even though that was a physical space experience, there was so much connectivity to the conversation in a digital way and all these kiosks that made me feel like I was a part of a larger conversation, and vice versa. If you're in a digital space, how do you connect people? So for example, we would go, when we went to our pop-ups, we had a programming calendar and we would do Facebook Lives. And so we would bring in people because we said, hey, look, within the first 3 days of Brandless's launch, we were already shipping to 48 states every day. And so we didn't want anyone in our community to feel like they weren't a part of it, or we went to LA and we didn't care about them. And so we would go live on Facebook and do Q&As and chats so that the people in the community all over the country could contribute and they would feel like they were part of what we were doing. So thinking about ways to connect physical spaces and virtual spaces is very important.
And let's talk about Facebook versus Instagram. Do you use them the same way? Which is now more powerful? Which will be more powerful? Are there other networks we should be looking at? Is it really just a TV station now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It really depends on your brand. So if you are a B2B, and it really depends what message. So the medium is the message. So LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful platform, not only for business, but for connecting on your values and your intentions. Because even if you are a consumer brand, LinkedIn, because that's where you're recruiting, and so attracting and retaining the best talent, you can't ignore LinkedIn. And so how do you create the right messages for that platform versus how do you create the right messages? So the Facebook platform, which is much richer than the Instagram platform in terms of features and functionality, is a place for certain things. Instagram and ITV is a place for certain things. YouTube is a place for certain things. Like I said, it's all over the place and it's quite confusing, but WhatsApp is also a social platform. So how do you enable that texting relationship and how do you create those kinds of conversations? So I would say that you need a strategy for all of it, and it needs to be fluid, and it's almost like a big spreadsheet with every single network. And then what is the message on those networks? What's the engagement strategy for those networks? And then who's monitoring and engaging and building those communities? And the best part is that and Apple does this quite well, as do many large scaled global enterprise companies. They actually put Q&A on their websites that are the customers helping each other. And so think about Wikipedia, right? So that's all written by people who are just passionate about facts and figures, and they're not being paid anything. In fact, I think there's like a Wikipedia community in Germany that was covering like one piece of their history, and they got paid in gummy bears because they're just connected to each other, and it gives them a sense of feeling seen, that they have importance. So the people who are on the Apple message boards helping you figure out how to upload the latest software, they do say at the top of it, look, this is our community, and so we don't endorse or not endorse, but it's a filter, of course, and they're going to look and see what's happening. So there's lots of different ways to create those conversations, but even your own website is a place for community, for Q&A and other things.
And there was a statement that you made, everyone wants to feel seen. So is that an ego thing? Is that an identity thing? Can you just go a little bit?
That's a human thing.
A little bit below that?
That's a human thing. And everyone wants
to. Is that an American thing?
I think that's a human thing. And I think in this country, I think that, we talked last night when you said, what are you passionate about? And I said, well, I'm passionate about love. And love, I didn't mean love in the sense of passion, although of course I'm passionate. Well, trust me, quite passionate about that. You don't know me, but once I'm a citizen here, we'll have a nice chat about it. But love in the public sector. And I was quoting Dr. Cornel West, this brilliant professor at Harvard, who talks about love in the public sector as justice. And justice to me is humanity. And so everyone, every single person here, every single person who works with you, the driver, the lovely driver of our bus this morning, the person who's cleaning my room at the hotel, the guy who's helping me with my baggage at the airport, like they're no different than me. We're all just part of a collective consciousness. And so everyone wants to feel seen. And so spotlighting everyone for who they are and what they do and what role they play, and the gratitude for this larger humanity, to me, is not a marketing strategy. That's a human strategy. And I've got to believe that's happening here in New Zealand too, because you've got some awesome humans here.
Yeah. So final question. You had some observations about how New Zealanders think about language, how we express ourselves. Can you share those with us?
Yeah.
And how relevant is that tone? Do we need to harden up and make it louder and clearer? Because
it's pretty clear.
We're kind of whisperers.
No, but you'd be surprised because you don't notice it, because it's like something you might take for granted because it's just the way you are. But, if you were to see my iPhone feed, you would see like pictures of, almond milk and pictures of street signs and pictures of government signs, because I'm constantly documenting language and brands. And what I love about this country is that you have the cleverness married to the kindness, married to the humanity of, the environment and what we're trying to do. And that, as we said last night, it's like a Rubik's Cube. And so I found, no matter where I looked, that it was that conversation was happening on box tops. That conversation was happening on street signs. Even when your lights turn green in Auckland, the little guy moves. That's like a wink. It's what I call a link with a wink. So it's like a bit of humor there that you might not even notice, or the signage around waste and garbages, or the signage around, when you get off the plane and they tell you that they're going to confiscate your fruit, they're going to clean the mud from your shoes, which was a nice service, actually. But that, and they're going to do all of these things, but they did it with a sense of humor, and they must have told us 17 times, last warning or $400. And so all of that I photographed because it was so kind. It was like, we're not here to trap you. We're actually here because I first thought to myself, the apples I understood, but the mud I didn't understand until I understood the environmental challenges that you have, and that you're trying to preserve this environment, and bringing in bugs could actually affect the foliage, which then could affect the birds, which then all of a sudden I'm in customs with a conversation around the eco-tourism that's so important to this country as a business traveler arriving. And so language and signage and all of that with generosity, right? It was like 3 or 4 times they told us before they said, okay, last chance. And so, but it wasn't in a finger-waving way. It was in a engaging way where I actually didn't feel like we were being hand-slapped. We were actually being educated. And so language, whether it's on the side of a coffee cup, or it's in an airport, or it's even the man crossing the street with his feet moving, is all part of a brand expression.
So we should really be harnessing that, right?
Yeah, well, you
if
are.
We've got that nice, unique tone.
Personality of this country is everywhere.
As we think about building international brands, we shouldn't.
Oh, don't.
Try and lose that.
No. But I will say that in the spirit of that, and I know we're way over, but you ever go on to Chrome, Google, and you lose Wi-Fi, and so it says, oh my gosh, something's gone wrong. But then when you come back, they say, in the US, they say, and we're back. But that's not what they say here. They say, good day, mate, we're back. And so Google actually rewrites that copy in every single country to make it relevant and culturally specific. And so it's a great example of taking their intention, which is to have humor, to have a conversation with you, but doing it in a way that actually relates to the people out there. And there are blogs that document all of this, but it's just a perfect example of how to take the intention, but then make it culturally relevant.
Awesome. Tina, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.